Cedar Point season has just ended, and it was actually a pretty good year for Cedar Point. We did an episode on it a few weeks ago where we talked about our actual experience, and I have a whole new look on Cedar Point, so we called the episode, I guess, for Cedar Point fanboys now. And while that may be the case, there's still a lot that I wish would happen to Cedar Point. And there's the whole Ohio theme parkscape to me has always been very fascinating. So for those who have been fascinated for a long time, how can you not be? We also just launched our remastered episode of the Jaga Lake Too Big to Thrive. So it should be in your feeds as one of the most recent episodes because we have remastered it. So definitely check that out. We talk all about the Jaga Lake history. But today it's going to be about Cedar Point. And Cedar Point closes early this season. Well, not closed early this season. It's already closed for the season because they don't do a winter event. Kings Island stays open through the winter to do their Winterfest event. But
do you know that Cedar Point used to actually have a winter event of some sort? It was called Christmas in the Park. And
love that name.
There's not even that much. They did it for 1 year in 1994. And it was probably a huge mistake because Cedar Point, Sandusky in general, pretty much all of Lake Erie, Ohio, is just not very pleasant to be at in the wintertime. So I don't imagine that it went very well. And I can't imagine it going very well if they were to try to do something like that, if they wanted to, bring back a winter event. I just think Cedar Point is not a park that lends itself to that. They do winter chill out. That's like, the Thuzy fan event, but it always looks
Nerdfest.
Incredibly cold. So that's one that they're probably going to be leaving in history.
Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. And today's episode is exciting because today's episode is about Armchair Imagineering Cedar Point. And if you've followed us for a long time, which a lot of people have, we do these Armchair Imagineering episodes once in a while, and they are just about us loving on theme parks and discussing what we want to see and what we think will be a good fit. And if there's one park that is like a roller coaster tycoon fever dream, practically, it's Cedar Point. Like, to your heart's desire, you can imagine all the cool things. They've done so many cool things, and I can imagine a million cool things. So today's episode, we're going to Armchair Imagineer Cedar Point. We're going to figure out what we want to add, what we think should be replaced, what kind of other improvements they're going to make this like a better park. And I want to be realistic. Like, we're not just over here Armchair Imagineering the world's biggest flying coaster from one end of the park to the other end of the park. Like realistic stuff. Like, what would really make the Cedar Point? I don't think I would.
You would if
I'm not
you
that
could.
big of a flying coaster fan. But more on that later, I guess. We're just kind of make like a realistic Imagineering of Cedar Point. What they need next. Now that Daddy Six Flags / Cedar Flags / Cedar Fair is encompassing all these parks, I've started to see really interesting concepts that they're putting in those surveys. I think Alpen Fury Can is one that was a great choice, by the way. I think the company, it may still be heading in a decent direction. I know that financially it wasn't like the strongest window after the merger, but I have high hopes, to put out a survey for Six Flags Great America to put in a Giga Coaster, kind of Orion style, call it Eagles Fury. I mean, bring it on. So with that kind of mentality, I'm excited to see where the future of the chain goes. And Cedar Point's probably still like at the helm of like coaster heaven for the chain, even though I could argue that Magic Mountain could be that. Cedar Point is just a fun park to toy around and see what we think could be a cute fit. So that's today's episode.
Walking around there on our visit this time, it was a very positive experience. It was the best visit we've ever had to Cedar Point, I think.
I agree. Well, day 2 for sure.
Yeah.
Day one operationally was very challenged.
And we'll actually talk a little bit about why it was tough in this episode. But I would have to say that some of my favorite things about Cedar Point is like the stuff that they're doing right now. Like, we're huge Top Thrill 2 fans and Siren's Curse fans. Like, I think we agree that those two coasters are our top two. in the park, which is a really exciting trend. Uh, especially in a park that already had so many great rides. But walking around there and like enjoying the park, like sometimes for us, enjoying a park means like musing on what it needs to
Yeah, it's potential, I guess.
yeah. And there's some things it's like, oh, I think this is a good idea, and then some things are like the park needs to do this. It needs to do this. Like there's some things that just need to be happening, and some things that are like, oh, that would be cool. Which is an important differentiation, because it's like some things would be like, oh, that would be so awesome, you know, coasters and stuff. And then other stuff, it's like, you know, fixing things, and there's just certain guest comfort experience aspects of the park that it's like, if the park is going to continue on an upward trend, these things need to be addressed, and preferably, you know, quickly. But I think it's a nice mix of things that we would love to see happen, and things that are like, okay, like Cedar Point, like you're a global roller coaster destination, like you need to fix some of your bathrooms, like that kind of stuff.
100%.
And being in the park, especially inspired a couple of imaginary area redos, section redos. The park is a little bit in flux right now. After Steel Vengeance opened, and they put all of their eggs into this Forbidden Frontier concept for the central island of Cedar Point. Go ahead.
I have a suggestion. What if we start at the entrance and made our way around?
We can do that.
Because I feel like it may be easier to follow along with, perhaps for people that don't frequent it as often, or just in general, I think it may be easier to follow along if we just kind of took that almost like bottle opener kind of shape of the park.
Yeah.
And just went, you know, did
upside
that.
down. It's, to me, it's, oh yeah,
and
I
just
see what you mean. Yeah.
And then kind of just discuss things along the way, as if I was like a park inspector, roller coaster tycoon style, and just walked around my clipboard and said, change, change, if VIP
like
coming
Walt
in,
Disney
change.
walking around his little clipboard.
Yeah. Okay.
But, yeah.
So that way, at least. So first of all, I think the entrance is actually perfect, because I love what they did with Gatekeeper. Of course, I'm a Gatekeeper's biggest fan, but also I just think what they did with Gatekeeper was great. Like, reinvent the entrance, build a really marketable roller coaster. I mean, like, what's more Cedar Point than having a roller coaster thread through your entrance? Like, I think that is great, iconic. They kind of did it again with Carowinds, besides the point, but I think entrance-wise, it's clean, it looks appropriate, and perhaps almost misleading for what comes next, because then it's a lot of old buildings and a lot of city park center blocks and like spider webs up your, you know, it's like that for me is an immediate thing. It's like there needs to just be an overall refresh of the majority of buildings, maybe a cohesive style and cohesive fixtures like sinks, bathrooms. I mean, center block walls painted blue with, I don't know, just the whole idea of the restroom situation needs to be changed into what like California's Great America has, where all the restrooms have been retrofitted, they're clean, they've got nice tile work. I feel like that's one of the biggest pet peeves of the park, and it starts right at that like restroom at Ocean Motion. You know what I'm saying?
With the cinder block entrance like setup. Yeah, there's I think bathrooms are a huge room for improvement. I mean, the park in general is kind of at a crossroads. It's in flux. The point that I wanted to make earlier about Forbidden Frontier is just that like the park has tried to do some things, and right now there is, you know, they dabbled with that right before COVID, because it was a thematic follow-up to Steel Vengeance, and then with COVID they kind of called it quits, and then they also did this Snake River Expedition thing. But my point was just that the park has a lot of areas that they need to redevelop, a lot of areas that are prime for elevating. But then there's just a lot of stuff in the park already, in areas, guest areas that are already being focused on that need some work. And I think bathrooms, for me, it's bathrooms. And then there's definitely in the forward midway area, the main midway, the boardwalk area, the boardwalk midway, they've done such a nice job with that now I feel like the main midway, the main promenade could use a little help to kind of bring it up to that level. And maybe, you know, breaking up some of the concrete to put planters. Kitty Kingdom, I know you hate Kitty Kingdom. I think you would like for Kitty Kingdom to go away, but I think Kitty
Yeah,
Kingdom could just be like dolled up a little.
there's a place and a time for Kitty Kingdom. And the placement, of course, not going to move Kitty Kingdom around. But let me preface that, while we're on the topic of what I call like Cedar Point Boulevard, like cute look. However, it's not that cute. It's very concrete and the landscape is kind of basic. While there's actually some pretty decent landscaping over by that Skyride station and the little gift shop and the Starbucks,
Yeah.
there's like that. If you look straight ahead, you can see it's almost as if a gatekeeper presents itself through like scenery.
The topiaries and stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like a topiary frame almost. There is some decent stuff there, but to me, I feel like if you look at the King's Entertainment Parks, so King's Island, King's Dominion, Canada's Wonderland, and in a way even like the Great Americas, not really counting Chicago because she's not maintained very well, but the California one. There's like a sort of presence when you come in with like water features and like nicely aligned midways. I think if they were to take that kind of approach and beat up some of the concrete and just make it taller trees, nicer landscaping, maybe put water features in the middle, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for, because it is like a very concrete-y long walkway until you get to Corkscrew. And then from there, it's not as bad because it's more winding. But then along the way, of course, you have Kitty Kingdom, which I was telling Alex earlier on our little walk around the neighborhood. I was like, maybe Kitty Kingdom, there's a place for that, but it's not even that cute. I feel like it's not even retro cute, because in a way it's a very distinct style. But to me, I feel like give it all a really colorful redo. Give it, I don't know what to do about it. Maybe planning some landscaping is half the work, but to me it really feels like, God, I have a hard time describing it. It has like no character to me. Maybe to some people it does because it has like sentimental value, but in a concrete world of concrete, it just adds to the concrete craziness to me.
Yeah, I agree. Kitty Kingdom and to that end, also Planet Snoopy could use some work, just because I think like the Planet Snoopy areas in general were kind of like quick and dirty reskins of like the Nickelodeon and Hanna-Barbera stuff for the Paramount parks. Now that other Cedar Fair parks like Michigan's Adventure and Carowinds have started retrofitting their Planet Snoopy into Camp Snoopy, I think it's time for Cedar Point to do that as well. I think every Camp Snoopy needs to be converted, or every Planet Snoopy needs to be converted into a Camp Snoopy, because it's just a real like aesthetic thread instead of it being just a bunch of generic Snoopy and Peanuts themed rides of all over, Especially because Cedar Point's Camp Snoopy or Planet Snoopy is not that big, so it wouldn't be so huge of a project to like convert it into Planet Snoopy. And then some parks like Kings Island, I think they could almost do both, because they kind of have a Camp Snoopy corner already where the log flume is, but that area is so big that it's a lot to have it themed to like one environment. So like I get it, but for Cedar Point's area, I think it would just be a lot cuter and would lend itself. It would just be more aesthetically pleasing if they went with a more unifying theme for that kitty area. And then maybe with Kitty Kingdom at the very least, when you say Camp Snoopy, you think of like trees and lumber and like anything like the wooded aesthetic of camping. So that's something that would lend itself to the Snoopy area and to Kitty Kingdom, because Kitty Kingdom is already a very lumber forward aesthetic. It's like colored lights and wood, a wooded area. But yeah,
and in a way, I almost feel like there's an identity crisis in this major walkway, because then you have kind of like that cinder blocky, concrete aesthetic that I feel like I'm almost associate classic Cedar Fair with. If you're going to go to Valley Fair or Dorney Park and like hit you in the face how like almost stoically concretey and blocky it all is.
Yeah.
And while there is something to say about the cleanliness of that, I just think that it doesn't really work at almost any of the parks, but definitely not at Cedar Point, because then there's a lot of aesthetic differences. You've got like the classic carousels and the car ride on the side, and the plaza over by the Raptor. It all to me feels a little bit too bland in that regard. So I'd rather just them add a bunch of landscaping and kind of keep it aesthetically more modern, maybe add some modern aesthetics and make it a cohesive walkway. All you have to do is change the storefronts to kind of match each other and maybe add some more landscaping. And I guess I'll be kind of early in what I would want to see in that. But If I think of Cedar Fair or Cedar Point particularly, I think of oceans of switchbacks, concrete oceans with metal railings, and barely any shade. And so the first ride, the entrance, but that is to me a serious problem, is Raptor, because Raptor is no longer as popular as it was in 1994. Was that open year? Yeah. Even though it was a phenomenal ride and it's still a really great ride, I just don't think you need all those oceans of switchbacks anymore. So I'm like, Mr. Rip out a bit of the concrete here or there and fill it in with some landscaping, some trees, some tall hedges, anything to kind of break up that ocean of switchbacks. And that will immediately kind of hopefully, I feel like it kind of immediately translates into doing that with a lot more of the concrete around there. That's one of my biggest things about Cedar Point, period. And I think that applies to almost every switchback ocean. You're not going to tell me you need all those switchbacks for Millennium Force anymore. You're not going to tell me you need all those switchbacks for Magnum anymore. You're not going to tell me you need all that for Rougarou. There's some rides where
they might need it on Magnum, because on the first day that we went, it was one train.
Yeah, one train off. So that's crazy.
They were using it. Also, I just realized they do have a Camp Snoopy. How could I forget? The area of the kiddie area that actually has the coasters is Camp Snoopy.
Got both there
and separate. Yeah. But I guess I would still say I want Planet Snoopy to get rethemed into something. They should make it like Snoopy's Boardwalk. Yes. Give it like a 50s theme, a beachy theme, and incorporate it with the boardwalk area.
With directly.
Because Planet Snoopy just is lacking in identity. Even just looking at it from, I have Google view, and it's like there's some nice landscaping there. There's some nice trees, unlike Kitty Kingdom, which is like an ocean of concrete with a few trees. But yeah, I think Planet Snoopy. All of the my statement still stands. All the Planet Snoopies need to go and be turned into something that has an actual unifying theme component and not just generic Snoopy themed rides. So we'll say Camp Snoopy and Snoopy's Boardwalk for Cedar Point, and then something. Kitty Kingdom needs something. It just needs. There's just so much. I can really see what you mean by like looking at it from up above. There's so many of the little umbrella rides, but there's just a lot of concrete around. And I'm not saying that like you have to tear up all the midways, but like just a little bit and put a tree there wouldn't ruin like the walkability of an area to have a lot like more trees. I mean, it's Kitty Kingdom. It's not like there's going to be oceans of crowds. The Max Air Midway is kind of a little bit like that too. You can kind of see how they dropped Max Air down on what used to be walkway. It used to be actual walkable space, and now it's more of like a lead up to the ride. And the midway is sort of bottlenecked to the right of it. So yeah, I guess I would just say again.
So you know how they've really improved that boardwalk area?
Yeah.
When they added the mouse and like they did some landscaping.
The Grand Pavilion.
If that is the way that they just approached pretty much all of that front half of the bottleneck or the bottle opener, where like all the way up to Corkscrew, that is the aesthetic they went with, like decent landscaping, cohesive building, and theming style, all the way through. Then I feel like it'd be awesome.
Like there's a couple of spots that are really nice, like around the Cadillac cars. Yeah. There's lots of trees. Even Raptor has some decent trees and stuff around it, but then there's these huge chunks of just bare concrete that could really benefit from.
Yeah, from the entrance all the way over to the boardwalk. For me, the boardwalk on one side and then Corkscrew on the other side, for me, that's really where it's kind of a struggle bus. And by adding Siren's Curse, I feel like they've kind of improved that corner of Iron Dragon, because that wasn't great to begin with, but that's been kind of improved. And by having Valraven, and Valraven has that kind of modern Cedar Fair aesthetic that they used at Carowinds too, and that they've used for like Gatekeeper and the new park entrance. If they just carry that and connect it, because if you stand over by Valraven, they've done a pretty okay job, and I'm talking over by that wall where you can look at the ride through that window. If that's kind of the aesthetic that they apply for the entirety of that giant entrance walkway, I think we're in good shape. But for me, right now, it's Identity Crisis and more on the bad side of just being ugly and not very pleasant, and not because it's a bunch of different fun styles. So that makes sense.
The area in front of Blue Streak, too, I feel like could use a little more planter action.
100%. I feel like it's this exact same struggle.
It was a very utilitarian change with Valraven having a midway, building the Valraven midway there. And some areas of the Valraven Midway look really nice, and some areas, like right where it transitions into Blue Streak, like you could tell that like some of that was a ride. Like when they had the Calypso there, it was like just kind of Midway that they uncovered and paved over, and they didn't bother to put any planters there. But I do think it's getting better. Part of what makes doing episodes like this fun is like the understanding that the park is in a good direction, going in a good direction, and it's probably going to do things that are adjacent in some ways to the suggestions being made. Because some of the stuff just feels obvious. Like obviously they're going to do something with Forbidden Frontier. Obviously Snake River Falls being retired, like, and the Sky Coaster next to each other. It's like, yeah, there's going to be things done here, and then hopefully some of the stuff is like, you know, inevitable, and some of the stuff is like, oh, I hope they do this. Like I hope they go back and break up some more concrete and plant more trees, because that seems to be the direction that they're going in. But we just have to wait and see and hope for the best. But I think
So then let's move on a little bit further down, and let's just start with, Corkscrew. The corkscrews are there. Let's talk about Corkscrew. So I think you and I both agree that Corkscrew has an important place in the timeline. It's kind of an artifact, and I don't want it to go, but it does need a little bit of help because the way it runs is just not great. Although I will say doing front row with your legs stretched out is kind of fun. It still doesn't run great. So I think this is honestly an obvious qualifier for just new trains.
Yeah.
Just start off with maybe a little bit of track work, bring in Vekoma and give them some MK1212 trains. Clearly they're working with Vekoma already. I expect a lot more Vekoma projects coming up. And that will be an easy fix. It can stay the way it is. It looks classic. It doesn't need a lot of help. It just needs some new trains.
Yeah.
It needs some new trains.
There's a lot of people calling for the ride to be demolished, and I don't think that's the answer. Even though the corkscrews would probably still be left behind and it would look really nice, I think Corkscrew is a keep. And there's another attraction that we'll talk about later that is not a keep. One that we would vote to demolish instead of Corkscrew. For those of you playing at home, maybe you can guess. But yeah, MK1212s, the ride turns 50 next summer. Cedar Point, if you're listening, like, do it. 50th anniversary Corkscrew. First roller coaster with 3 inversions. It opened in 1976. It's vaguely American themed. Our country turns 250 next summer. Celebrate with some nice new MK1212s. And the ride will experience a brand new lease on life, and people will love this ride in ways that they would have never imagined. And Top Thrill 2 will have a cute new little next-gen friend with next-gen rolling stock.
Another thing I think about this little midway here is, of course, everything Top Thrill 2 is pretty good. It's already been edited. It feels to me still like a little messy. I feel like maybe a lot of Cedar Point is like that until you kind of get to the back corners of the park. It just feels like kind of clashy. So for me here, I would like maybe see a little more consistency. Maybe move that one flat right there and move it either up to the walkway next to Gemini, just to kind of keep that like flat rides fairground kind of vibe over there. And then for Power Tower, which I love Power Tower, they already did some repainting on it, so it looks good. I'd say take the logo on top and replace it, because now the logo clashes with the actual calls to the ride, because it's still that green, neon green Cedar Point 90s logo. Take that down and just replace it with the new Cedar Fair logo or Six Flags logo, whatever we want to do, Cedar Point logo, I guess. And maybe, again, some more landscaping.
I think what they should do, actually, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the Super Himalaya flat ride. I feel like that needs to stay there, because it's good to have flat rides that are kind of distributed around. I think they should just take Corkscrew and Super Himalaya and give them a vague racing upgrade theme, like what they did with Power Tower, and make those 4 rides its own little racing
that's fair.
midway.
Making it more cohesive. It just feels so out of place now.
It does feel completely out of place.
I feel like of course, the colors of Power Tower are nicely complementing Corkscrew, and they really work well with the colors on Top Thrill 2. That identity crisis had been fixed.
Yeah.
Because that alone was kind of a weird midway. Like now having like gray, red, white, blue.
Yeah,
that being like the overall aesthetic is awesome, because that works as well. But now you got Himalaya out there feeling out of place. So if they can fix that, then sure, I agree. Yeah. Moving along the midway, we move over to Magnum. Honestly, I wouldn't really change anything about Magnum. I love that they play into the aesthetic of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They have that like retro vibe, retro music, synth music, space vibes. They have really clean kind of, like the tree line is clean, the station, like everything about that just feels like retro, but pretty well done. I don't love the ocean of switchbacks that they've got going on for it. I wouldn't mind if that was broken up by maybe another line of trees. But I'm just a landscaping like nerd. I just do not like concrete paths and just gross. Why?
Magnum, our attempt at a Magnum experience on day one of our visit, which was a Thursday, I think is a good segue to stop and talk about staffing and operations at Cedar Point. And as much as I would love to say, like, oh, well, you need to staff more, like our Thursday, that was, I'm amazed the park was even open on a Thursday. On the one hand, I'm grateful it was open. On the other hand, it was such a hot mess that it's like, if you can't efficiently run a park on a given calendar day, then like, should you be running the park? And like Magnum was a great foil for that because they were running one train. And on their end, it was like, well, 2 trains is allegedly too many because the trains have to be full so that it doesn't valley. But then like 45 minute, wait for Magnum is just crazy under.
Yeah, rather is wait for the train to fill up and run 2 trains if they really needed. Like,
it just seemed like an unnecessary
early day or something.
And then like all the rides,
like an hour.
The rides that were closed, the number of rides that were closed on our visit, and I'm like, I get it. The park wasn't busy, but it was also the capacity of the park was choked to such a degree that it felt busier than it did on Saturday or on Friday, whatever day. No, it was Thursday, Friday, right? Or was it Friday?
Yeah, Thursday felt busier despite being much quieter.
Yeah, Thursday felt busier because even though there were fewer guests, operations, it's like the guest level was here and the operations level was falling below the expectations relative to the guest level. Friday, there was more guests, but they were like operating up here. They were doing so much better given the day. So I don't really know what the answer is there because I get that they want to be open and that they need to staff based on crowd expectations so that they're not upside down on their operating costs. So like I know
so many rides were down too. Yeah,
but it just I'm like there's got to be a better way. Like I refuse to believe that the way that the park was running on that Thursday was like as good as it can be for operating on a Thursday. Like it just seemed like it was like there's got to be better. They could have estimated a little more. They could have aired more on the side of operational capacity, even with such a low attendance forecast, because it just didn't feel like the experience that it should have felt like compared to Friday, where they were just on top of it, and it was like 2 different parks. It was like 2 different experiences completely.
So do we want to move on to the Jana Midway, or do we want to just discuss the plaza real quick with Iron Dragon, Siren's Curse, like that little corner of 4 coasters?
Actually, I want to ask you something. Do you think it's possible that Intamin would do drop towers on Top Thrill 2? Like Zumanjaro?
I mean, I think it's possible, and I would love a super tall drop ride, especially because that would really play in well with our plan of that Midway. But I don't see why if you got Power Tower.
I feel like they could use it. They could do it. If any park could, it's Cedar Point. Because like Power Tower is very popular. It wasn't open on our visit for maintenance reasons, but my understanding is that it's quite popular, especially now because it's like the Top Thrill 2 sponge. It's right there, and it also has an ocean of switchback. Like if you look at Power Tower, they have more space dedicated for switchbacks for Power Tower than they have for the actual ride plot, and it's a huge ride.
I don't know.
So while I feel
really like
there would be an overlap, obviously
for
an attraction overlap.
Good Adventure, rest in peace.
I just miss that experience.
And I really like, of course, Drop of Doom and Magic Mountain, but I just don't know if that's what they need. And if you're going to say, like, well, if you take out Power Tower, then maybe I would feel more like maybe that's what they need. But I don't know if both is too much for me, because I think about marketability. Like, what's like an average park goer gonna think? Like, oh, another drop tower. We already have a drop tower.
I feel like Cedar Point people could do it. Like Power Tower and Demon Drop ran like concurrently for a long time, and I feel like Zumanjaro is a different enough experience from Power Tower that they could market it, and it would just be cool. And like the capacity isn't even that great, so it's like they wouldn't have to worry about like, oh, like will it be marketed? It will always have a line. Like Cedar Point could literally have 7 drop towers, and every single one of them would have a line at some point. 3 for Top Thrill 2 and 4 for Power Tower, and they would still be busy.
Okay, I'll say yes, only because we're going to be Imagineering a walkway there later that we've already discussed that would cut from the Magnum Park entrance all the way across the island that we're going to talk about in more detail later, and then cross over back to the entrance plot / like little area with the Panda Express for Millennium Force. And since that walkway would have to go kind of underneath the tower of Top Thrill 2 anyway, like the Top Hat Tower, they could make that a ride. So, okay, I'll go along with this. I want Top Thrill. No, that makes no sense. Anyway, Top Thrill, whatever, Drop Tower. Drop Thrill 2,
Come
please.
on, Drop Thrill 2.
Drop Thrill 2 or Drop Thrill 3. That's too confusing for the general public.
Drop Thrill
because I want 3 towers. Or yeah, whatever the name could be. Drop Thrill sounds kind of cute. Then yes, okay, I will admit it. Should we just dive into that next plan then, or should we go around and continue the loop?
No, I think that's a good idea. I want to start by saying that, so for those of you not familiar, Cedar Point opened a boat ride very briefly called Snake River Expeditions, and it was a scenic boat ride that was actually opened on the plot previously occupied by Paddle Wheel Expeditions, which was their steamboat paddle wheeler that went in a circle around the island that is now occupied primarily by Millennium Force's business end, the midway point with the directional changes and such. But also what's left of the Forbidden Frontier and like leftover infrastructure from Shoot the Rapids and a bunch of other stuff. This was Dinosaurs Alive for a while. All that to say that this island is sorely underutilized in all ways except being, you know, an area that is occupied by Millennium Force. And a park like Cedar Point, which is so massive, this plot is so big, it is too big to not be optimized for guest space, for guest access. So Sean and I talked this through. We argued our way down to an agreeable solution for this. And I love the idea of intersecting the big loop, the big midway loop of Cedar Point, slashing it right through the middle by, like Sean just mentioned, taking a midway from the Magnum XL 200 entrance of the park, the Cedar Point Shores, you know, entrance, and taking it all the way across over the island and basically to where the rock tunnels are for Millennium Force, where you go underneath the approach and exit of the Millennium Force airtime hills that lead into the island. Put a midway there. I think it's time. Carowinds did something like this when they built Borg Assimilator. They had a big river with an island in the middle, and they ended up taking a midway and cutting straight through it and turning the river into like 2 half-moon shaped lakes of sorts. And it might sound...
And even then, that was a much smaller setup, so it feels maybe more invasive. Here, I feel like it would really feel... Because Cedar Point is so massive, I think here it would really feel like a natural kind of... I'm surprised it doesn't even exist yet. Kind of like walkway to cut the park kind of in the middle. Yeah. And on that walkway, we would, of course, have the drop towers just mentioned. But then for the island itself, I have envisioned a master plan. And I think Cedar Point needs to stop trying with this whole walk-through entertainment thing. It's just not the kind of park for that. It's not Knott's Berry Farm. It's just not it. Like, people don't go to Cedar Point once a year just to go do that. They will go there because they want to ride the roller coasters. And I think it's very clear that's very much a like flashy ride focus. It's just that's just what sells tickets. That's what people go for. People from Detroit drive over there not for a walkthrough. They drive over there because they want to go and ride crazy roller coasters.
Forbidden
right?
Frontier was just a well-intended but complete failure. I mean, it was a one-way in, one-way out, huge section. The only way in is up by, where the ripcord was, where the old shoot the rapid station was. So it's the only way in. You could walk all the way down till you're parallel, like adjacent to Top Thrill Dragster. But in order to leave the area, you still have to backtrack all the way up and then come back down. I think
to the furthest point in front of park entrance.
The most fatal flaw of that whole concept was just having a one-way in, one-way out system, because it's just not practical. You got to give people, like, if you're going to have all this area walkable, there should be two ways to go through it so that it's a midway and not a cul-de-sac, a bottleneck of people getting in there and getting stuck. Like Roller Coaster Tycoon style, peeps are going to want to go the path of least resistance. They want to go as the crow flies from point A to point B to the best of their ability. And the whole Forbidden Frontier area just did not lend itself to that at all. So I feel like that's the only way.
So instead, with that midway going straight through it, I would like for them to turn this area into like a single ride area where like the area is the ride. And it's almost like Phantasialand, except for I cannot expect that kind of theming for them, so I don't want that kind of theming for them. However, what I would like to see is I would like to see a Vekoma flying coaster, a multi-launch Vekoma flying coaster. This park is just begging to have something like a flying coaster. It's just like a unique experience they don't have yet. With a lineup like Cedar Point, what are you going to do that's cool? I don't need no record-breaking flashiness. I don't want another Giga. I don't want any of that because it's already there. We don't need that. However, what we do need is something that's unique and marketable and fun and that can really occupy the island and not feel like a waste of space. So my idea is very simple. Low to the ground, almost like Fly, not very tall, but you have a large flying coaster that launches, that has maybe a dark ride section shortly in the beginning, at least something thematic because of the way that the seats can rotate. And then have it go all around the land, almost like a flying Maverick of sorts, but a little bit bigger. Between rockwork, over water, over some midways. The queue can be a long, winding queue. I don't want another switchback ocean. I want a queue that goes all over the area that has the end point of the queue, of course, being the station, but it doesn't feel like you're just going through endless switchbacks. That's the kind of vibe that I want, like tree lines. And since a flying coaster, the fact that Millennium Force hovers over you can be very unnoticeable because you're going to be facing down a lot of the ride. And so
that's true. I didn't even think about that.
All you have to do is like paint the bases of the supports, maybe like a rust color of Millennium Force, and build a bunch of thematic huts. Like I wanted to maintain its like Wild West kind of feeling. Theme it to an eagle for all I care. It doesn't have to be deep. It just needs to be an aesthetic. It needs to be an overall encompassing attraction that takes over the entire area. And I think that could be a really wonderful addition to this part of the park.
Agreed. I love, when you first said it, I was like, oh, it seems a little pie in the sky. But more I think about it, it's like it's not unreasonable for a park that already has a Vekoma tilt coaster and like a shitload of other coasters that do all other sorts of things. In fact, the reason why B&M didn't come to Cedar Point and build a flying coaster is because Dick Kinzel hated flying coasters and felt like it was a terrible capacity idea for a place like Cedar Point, because they've just never, B&M has done a great job with flying coasters as far as the experience goes, but it was never going to be a capacity queen. It was never going to be what Cedar Point needed. And Cedar Point went and built all manner of other types of rides that dispatch with a little bit more regularity, things like Valraven and Gatekeeper. But yes, all of that to say, I think flying coasters, I think, are timeless. It will always be a good idea to build a flying coaster as long as it's a Vekoma. And Phantasialand,
well, yeah, because the capacity of it could be quite great.
Is like obvious, not just for the coaster ride and like the capacity, but also, like you said, having a queue that weaves around the area, just like the way the queue for Fly weaves around Rockburg, instead of doing an endless switchback bank. And they could do something truly massive. I've heard people say that what they want from Cedar Point is like a next generation multi-launch coaster, something like a modern generation Maverick, which, I mean, Maverick's almost 20 years old now. It doesn't really have a multi-launch experience because it's the first launch is, a themed lift hill. So really it would be giving the park a flying coaster, a themed terrain coaster, and a multi-launch coaster, which are things that the park could really benefit from.
And I think the launching sensation on a flyer is quite unique,
Very.
and it's actually quite understated. I feel like it's really an awesome experience. And if you theme it decently, and you've got maybe a launch over the water, and a launch in a tunnel, and a launch, whatever you do with it, because you are working with a plot of land that you could nicely landscape that is already kind of forested a little bit. I feel like you can do a lot with this. And then having a multi-launch coaster, it also brings to the table a very unique riding style. I think not only is this great for capacity, because you could easily run 4 or 5 trains on it. If it has 3 launches and you have 2 stations, you've got your unloading, your load, which they're incredibly efficient stations for this particular ride type. I think you can honestly make capacity pretty good. I mean, Fantasyland is a pretty high capacity kind of operation. It's a very small park to handle 2.5 million annual. I think it's still, or does it have any visitors?
Like
Maybe
that,
not that many visitors. But either way, I think that could be a really beneficial kind of coaster to Cedar Point, and you can do all sorts of stuff with this ride type that we haven't really seen yet, because we only have one of them. But if Fly at Fantasyland is anything to really look at, I think it could be such a promising and really fun and different kind of ride for Cedar Point that it's worth sacrificing this last kind of big plot of land in the park too.
And there's just so much potential. I mean, so much space. And there's opportunities to elevate the Millennium Force experience a little bit by doing something major with this walkway. There's opportunities to do other attractions, like companion attractions to this coaster, maybe a flat ride, but like kiddie play areas and stuff. There's ways that you can make this an all family member experience, even though it's central around the
and this
coaster.
is an idea that we hadn't previously discussed, but you know how the park is lacking kind of like a water ride, and we're gonna discuss one of the options later. But one thing I also thought is, what if they just had like a modern log flume that kind of interacted with the with the flying coaster? What if it was a classic themed, wild, like frontier themed log flume, kind of a classic idea, but like in a modern sense, and have that interact with the flying coaster, and that'd be like 2 large winding attractions that will share theming, will share infrastructure. It could be a very beautiful kind of frontier forest with 2 incredibly marketable rides that are high capacity, have longevity.
Yeah,
because I
love that idea too. Especially as I look at this giant plot of land and admire the remnants of Shoot the Rapids up there in the top corner. It would be a beautiful thing to see a traditional log flume of some sort come back to Cedar Point. I think like we'll cover this more, but like water rides at Cedar Point are inevitable. They're going to keep trying, even though they keep failing at it. They're going to try. Snake River Falls is not the end of like high octane thrilling water rides at Cedar Point. I can guarantee you that. It's just a matter of like what they do and when and where, but never a matter of if. So yeah, I think even though we've talked about other water ride solutions, like I think it's inevitable that Snake River Falls will be replaced with a water ride of some sort. There's definitely room for a traditional log flume on your flying coaster frontier island. Or even maybe a flat ride too. One thing that I think Cedar Point could improve on, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not as bad as Magic Mountain per se, but like our recent visit to Canada's Wonderland made me realize that Cedar Point could do more to zhuzh up their flat ride collection, because while they have more substantial coasters than Cedar Point, Canada's Wonderland is technically right up there in the roller coaster numbers wise in the roller coaster bracket, but also is like in a league of their own when it comes to flat rides of all shapes and sizes, especially marquee like e-ticket flat rides. So the central positioning of this island with our flying coaster and potentially our log flume, I feel like they could also put a clone of Tundra Twister there, because Tundra Twister is not the most aggressive or thrilling ride, but it makes a statement. It's an elegant, beautiful, but also terrifying machine. And when you ride it, the views on that ride are immaculate. Like, what made that ride stand out to me in Canada's Wonderland is riding it in the proximity of Yukon Striker and admiring the views of Wonder Mountain and the rest of the park from up there in the relatively central location of the ride. So I think it's time for Cedar Point to do some more marquee flat rides and to take some cues from Canada's Wonderland and do something, that the United States doesn't have yet. Something really unusual, but like interesting, compelling, something that you want to watch and look at, something with high capacity. The Thunder Twister holds 64 people per dispatch, and I really enjoyed it. It's something that I would love to see more of, and Cedar Point is the right park for it, and especially if they put it somewhere where the views are incredible from in all 360 directions, which they are on a ride like Thunder Twister.
So while we're in that area, do you want to discuss the rest of the frontier, or do you want to backtrack to the Midway over by Gemini?
I guess we should talk about a little bit about the Siren's Curse Midway, or I guess that's its Midway. Siren's Curse and Millennium Force corner, and then we're all kind of caught up with the park as we're moving our way toward.
Sure enough. So I have some thoughts about this here. I do not like the way that this restaurant is positioned. Even though it's kind of classic, the coasters drive in. I think that when you walk up to this moment, it just feels kind of congested. You've got the weird planter with the seats around it in the middle of the corkscrews. Then you've got the restaurant blocking the entire view of Iron Dragon. So you can actually see there's a really nice lagoon there. So I say take this restaurant, cut it out. Time to separate from it. Maybe even build out the lagoon a little bit so that the lagoon hugs the walkway, and bring it all the way around to the queue, which they add an extended queue. But this way, the whole theme of water that Siren's Curse has will then continue on into the lagoon of Iron Dragon.
Totally.
This way, I mean, if it's really up to me, I would say take out all the concrete, connect the water thematically. You don't have to actually build the waterway, but then replace it with like a kind of like a wooden boardwalk to connect the two waterways. So take out the restaurant, expand the Iron Dragon Lagoon, build a wooden walkway, kind of planky walkway that just feels more like you're actually on a boardwalk. Some parks are good at doing that kind of stuff. I'm not sure Cedar Point is, but I can imagine. And then that way you take that whole water theme that we have, like the marina is right there, Siren's Curse is right there, which is themed to being on top of water.
Lean
and
into
so
it.
Iron Dragon's on the water. Lean into it and make that a giant kind of waterway lagoon vibe. Take the restaurant out, and worst case, build a restaurant on the side of Siren's Curse that before you get to the train station, and do something with that. Make it like a war theme, something. Make fish and chips. Get creative. I don't care. But that restaurant right now is a complete theme clash.
Yeah.
Valraven doesn't match the theme. Iron Dragon doesn't match the theme. Siren's Curse doesn't match the theme. Corkscrew is maybe the closest thing to a retro vibe we're going to get. And that's, to me, it just feels like another one of those like poorly placed Cedar Point, Cedar Fair kind of situations. Rip the whole thing out and just relocate it to next to Siren's Curse between the train station and Siren's Curse, and put it there, their space, by the terrible toilet situation where there's a million spiders.
Okay.
And then this way, just keep that clean. Keep it open. Put benches if you want. And then with that thought, I would like for there to be an aesthetic upgrade to Iron Dragon. The building itself is actually kind of cute and classic with that like rounded shape, kind of like a retro look. Lean into that and make it more of a mechanical, like industrial look. Make Iron Dragon almost like what they did with Vortex in Canada's Wonderland. Make it a more mechanical look. Bring some chromy, rusty vibes to it, and that will match right away kind of Siren's Curse, which has like the whole rust thing going on because it's on the water. Just adapt that. Make Iron Dragon and Siren's Curse long lost brothers, and thematically, I think, especially with colors too, they're both using red, it could work really well. And the shaping of the station for Iron Dragon already allows itself to just get a bit of a rusty, like a rustic aesthetic. I think it's an easy fix. I think that should be almost like a sister act. Those two rides should be its own kind of area. And then you've got the railroad. Once you cross that, You can do the other thing. Also, Rougarou is also themed to water. These 3 attractions can be its own subsection of water-themed attractions, rustic water-themed attractions. Make it so.
I totally agree. I love it. No notes. I love everything.
And then Millennium Forest. I mean, Millennium Forest is Millennium Forest. Iconic. Has its perfect late 90s, early 2000s aesthetic. It's almost like the evolution of Millennium. I would say, besides the ocean switchbacks needing a little bit of green, don't change it.
Yeah.
It has a really distinct aesthetic. It's on the other side of
Once
railroad
you cross
tracks,
the railroad
so
tracks, that's their transition.
It's Millennium Forest Plaza. It works for me. Could use some more landscaping, but these other 3 rides tie in together aesthetically, thematically, expand the waterways, build a fish and chips restaurant, call it a day.
Now that I'm looking at Coaster's Diner, I completely agree that it just, I understand that demolishing a restaurant and relocating a restaurant and like and adding new infrastructure for restaurants is not like the easiest thing in the world. But for the life of me, I don't agree with them having ever put a restaurant where it is, because you have it backed up to this lagoon, making it visible on all sides and also obscuring a great waterfront view area. All of that should just be turned into a beer garden or something. That little spot right there, that fork where after the sky ride, the midway splits into 2. It's just too nice with the corkscrew and Iron Dragon there. It's too nice for any of it to be gummed up with a restaurant's back end there on the water.
So on that topic, I actually kind of agree with that. So if you were to expand the waterway over, again, expand that whole theme of water and doing the boardwalky thing, I don't care if you put little stands on it. I would rather it be a wharf than a boardwalk. And again, I would move the whole restaurant out of the way of the water.
Yeah.
But if you're going to say like a beer garden, like that seems to be Cedar Point's thing anyway. There's every single area has to have a bar now. It's like bar central.
It's just so vibey.
It's all
like,
alcohol.
Make a big giant area of seats, wooden benches, landscaping, trees.
Right by the water, kind of theme it to a wharf. Keep that wooden walkway aesthetic. Turn, like what I just mentioned, the 3 coasters into a cohesive water theme, rustic water theme. Yeah, beers, drinks, I don't care. Just take the big building out of the way. That's my biggest thing. And move that over to the train station and have it facing, the back road. I think that could really, and now I'm actually strangely very excited about this because I hadn't pre-planned this part.
Yeah,
of the episode.
we just made this up just now.
Now we really armchair Imagineering. So, but it made me strangely excited because I never quite thought about the potential here until I just now put it all together. I'm like, there's such potential.
Yeah,
this could be a really cool, cohesive area, and that's the first thing gonna hit the end of the walkway. Is you're gonna hit this like wharf. I mean, what's more Cedar Point than a wharf?
Yeah. Just like
I think we should play into
Top
this.
Thrill 2 is becoming its own mini area with
with raceway themed
Power
area.
Tower being rolled into the theme, and how we would like to see Corkscrew and Super Himalaya rolled in as well. Siren's Curse is ushering in its own little mini land in our minds with the 3 coasters.
And I'm all about that kind of like groups of aesthetic. If you're going to make this Top Thrill 2 walkway an aesthetic, like it's all going to kind of match, especially with new MK12 tow trains, make that like kind of like the raceway, right? Which is already trying to push that anyway. And then you've got your wharf with your 3 coasters. And Millennium Forest gets its own plaza because it's Millennium freaking Forest, And then you go into Forbidden Frontier or Frontier. What's that land called technically?
Frontier Trail.
Frontier Trail. And Frontier Trail itself is actually by the only really nicely designated area that's kind of older.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you've got your boardwalk. I think if we were to focus as a Cedar Point on like 6 really major areas, kind of almost like the Knott's Berry Farm or the California's Great America application.
Exactly.
You've got your large lands where everything gets tied together aesthetically.
When they opened Railblazer in 2018, everything came with it. All of the rides around Railblazer are like, okay, you're Pacific Northwest themed now. It's national parks, it's redwoods, it's ranger stations. Like that is now the theme of everything around this ride.
And old Cedar Fair has always like sucked at that. Dorney Park, Valley Fair, Cedar Point. These parks, they're just throwing anything in there, and the aesthetic is concrete or like awnings over the queue. That is the only match. But now we're living in a different era. We're living in an era where like King's Entertainment, Paramount Parks, that kind of aesthetic, that kind of planning, that's the future. And I think it's not even that hard of a fix for Cedar Point to kind of lean into that. They're already kind of on their way. And I know that's A lot of this is Cedar Fair's future, thought of the future. Same with doing all the Camp Snoopies around their parks. I know that they're capable. And so I think for Cedar Point, its work is cut out. And there's more, of course, we're going to talk about. But so far, I think that would be like a great way to overall these major midways and to themed zones. Not even lands, it's themed zones. That brings me to the next exciting part of the episode.
So first, let's talk about
or
the
should we
bathrooms.
save this for last?
You want to talk about the bathrooms real quick? Because you mentioned the spider. The bathrooms by Siren's Curse are
scary.
So infested with spiders. And I don't mind spiders. In fact, I think spiders are great. We have spiders in our house. They eat the bugs. Spiders are great. I don't want a spider to fall on me while I'm taking a piss at the urinal.
Why do you make it seem like we live in sort of like spider-infested house? We got like a spider.
Every good house should have spiders. Spiders are good luck. They're cleanup crew. They're awesome. I don't want one to land on my shoulder while I'm going to the bathroom. So I don't know. Cedar Point being located where it is on the lake, obviously there's going to be bugs, and I don't mind that. But I'm just amazed at and I also realize that spiders are not bugs, but look, bear with me here. I feel like there's just a little too much bug action and arachnid action for comfort at Cedar Point. Like, I'm not saying like kill all the bugs, but I'm saying like there's just areas where bugs should be, and there's areas that bugs should not be, or at least they need to be reduced, because the number, I think there was like 100 spiders in that bathroom with their little egg sacs and stuff. And then like
easily. I mean, it's the problem is we're tall people
and waiting
so like
for
in order to like take this sounds kind of gross, but to actually use the restroom, my head was like between the webs and like between the spiders
from spiders while you were standing at the urinal. I would have taken a picture if it wouldn't have been inappropriate, to take a picture of the bathroom, which it is. And also the queue for Top Thrill 2, the exit pass queue and the exit walkway. I mean, it was like a spider fiesta, a total spider carnival was happening in this area. And it's like, as somebody who thinks spiders are really cool, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. For somebody who doesn't like spiders, it would be horrific. Like it would make you want to rip your skin off because of the amount of bugs and stuff there. So this is another problem that I don't know what the solution is, because I imagine that some of these are protected species. There's only so much that Cedar Point could do. But maybe there just needs to be more structures that are like weather sealed, like outdoor, like the outdoors need to stay outdoors with some of these structures, especially the bathrooms. I could take it, I would compromise and say you can leave the spider fiesta at the exit for Top Thrill 2, but like make sure that the bathrooms don't have spiders, like hundreds of spiders in them, if there's some possible way to do that humanely.
Yeah, I don't know if like, cleaning it up like once a week. But, like I said, I didn't really consider the aspect of them maybe being protected, because in my head I'm like, dude, just walk through and like clean out all the spider webs, because there's a million of them. But yeah, I didn't really think about that.
But I will say that they die every year. Every bug or creature or insect at Cedar Point dies every winter because it gets so unbelievably cold. Unless they're seeking shelter indoors in weather sealed spaces, in which case I would say there's only room for a handful of spiders in the weather sealed indoor spaces, not for an entire spider community.
Because the restrooms are very weathered, they're very outside. Yeah. Anyway, besides the point, I mean, it's like earlier in the episode I already mentioned, I really want all the restrooms to get like a nice upgrade.
Yeah.
That includes, of course, his restroom. So, yeah, for sure. Next on the map, I think we should head over. Should we finish with the Gemini Midway?
We'll finish with the Gemini Midway.
So for Forbidden Frontier, or the Frontier Trail, I keep messing up the name. That part of the park,
Frontier Trail.
I enjoy how low key it is. I'm not the really biggest fan of like petting zoos and that kind of animal aspect, especially at the park like Cedar Point. Like, no offense, why are there camels and horses like prancing like a few feet away from?
I just want to know if their living conditions are ideal.
Like, I don't know. It's not other times anymore. Like, who goes to Cedar Point so they can see a camel? Like, no offense. I don't think anyone does that. There's a million zoos in Ohio to do that, whether they're legal or not. Like, I don't know. It's just not, for me, it's not a vibe. So I say, take the animals, put them in a sanctuary, retire them. and take that area and leave it as of right now, just kind of chill, because we need a chill area at Cedar Point, and Cedar Point a lot of like high energy in your face colors. The fact we have trees here, let's keep them here for a while.
Yeah.
That could be a future expansion plot in my Imagineering dreams. But for right now, I say keep that walkway from the Panda Express that will now have a new plug-in from our newly created Midway, and all the way over to the Rapids Ride. Keep that clean. Keep it vibey. Maybe a walkthrough. Maybe some like cute little knickknacks, but maybe not the animals. Not for me. Rapids Ride, keep it, but I say make the Rapids Ride kind of like the Knott's Berry Farm Rapids Ride, and turn it into a themed Rapids Ride. Because even though Cedar Point doesn't do a lot of theming, and even though like themed walkthrough entertainment experiences are just never going to sell tickets and are never going to be popular at Cedar Point, enhancing current attractions, for me, it's an easy yes.
Great idea.
Enhance this by doing a couple more thematic elements, maybe a couple animatronics. And I think that because it's kind of a lackluster ride. Let's face it, it's not like the greatest.
I don't
Rapids
even
ride in the
remember
world.
it. Have we ridden it together?
I can't remember.
I think I rode it in 2003.
It's like it's decently landscaped.
It does have really nice forestation. And I don't think this is asking a lot from Cedar Point, because they have had themed, like interactive, like little animatronics and stuff on their railroad for quite some time. That little stretch, there's like a little boom town behind Rougarou that is just for the train. The train goes through it. And when they moved the ripcord from the Challenge Park over to Frontier Trail, they themed it to that guy, the Professor So-and-so's Frontier Flyer or whatever. There was a character that was brought to life from the Cedar Point Railway boomtown scene, and they gave him his own ride for the time being. I don't think the Sky Coaster was ever that great of a fit for that area of the park, except for the fact that it's not a high-capacity attraction, so you don't have to worry about a lot of people gumming up that operation. But more importantly, I think the area where the Sky Coaster is going to get rolled into the development plot for Snake River Falls, which right now is a very cute little setup area where they have the retired boats from Snake River Expeditions, and they've got them floating in there and all dressed up and stuff. It's a very interesting spot. I took some video of it because I'm like, this isn't going to be like this for a very long time. I give it like 2 years max, and that'll all be redeveloped into something else, because the cavity left by Snake River Falls is noticeable. For as big of a ride it is, it actually fit there very neatly, but they need another ride like that. They need another thrilling water ride back there to replace it.
So originally I had agreed with a thrilling water ride back there, and I have thought about it. And since I had decided a modern log flume, which could even be along the lines of SeaWorld San Antonio's launch log flume, if you're going to be in the theme of launching,
Totally.
Launch me in the flying coaster, launch me on a log flume. Do the log flume thing with the flying coaster on the island. I think they would complement each other well. I think interactively really fun, because a flying coaster around the log flume, you look at the boats all the time. I think that could really, really work. So I actually would say, don't even do the water coaster that we had previously maybe thought out. Because Alex had kind of considered maybe planning a Mack water coaster with potential inversion or launches, because there's a launch one coming to Germany soon. So there could be a launch. But I actually don't know if I like that idea anymore. I think it could be too busy over there. Babe, come on. Anyway, so I think it'd be too busy over there.
Look, the one reason why I think a water ride belongs over there is because they already have one. There's a rapids ride there. Normal people like to do all of the water rides in one go and then be done with them. That's why Toon Lagoon exists.
This is not all Islands of Adventure.
But Cedar Point already had that set up. They had the 2 water rides in that one corner, and people would typically...
Just because it had it, that doesn't mean that it was a good idea.
It was a good idea. Snake River Falls got you really soaked, and you might as well do the rapids ride too while you're there doing the wet rides.
If these attractions can't self-support themselves without needing each other, then they shouldn't be built. I
would say that I like the idea of a log flume being with your flying coaster, but I just, as long as it doesn't get you too wet, as long as it's not like a total ass kicker drencher.
They can dry off on the flying coaster. No, I think actually they should. You did mention earlier, and not in the episode, but just when we were chatting about this concept, you did mention along the lines of doing a twist and splash from Mack. I could maybe support that being like a small attraction, but I kind of enjoy the quietness of having the Maverick over water elements, and then having that, that bridge, and then having the water on the other side where Snake River was. That whole area kind of quieter now. I don't hate that. And if you're gonna, I kind of wouldn't mind keeping it quiet like that. But build a twist and splash or something smaller,
No.
something a little bit more. You really want a launch log flume, but also
It doesn't
a water
actually
coaster
have to be a water coaster or anything. I just think Snake River Falls and the Sky Coaster plot and what's left of the infrastructure for Shoot the Rapids, like the station building and stuff on that side, they need a coaster should go there. A ride should go there.
I have an idea.
They have a station and a queue for it already.
They have a station and queue already. So what they should do, they should build a Vekoma family launch coaster. While we're on the Vekoma train, make it a package deal, baby.
Okay. That works for me.
Do kind of like Big Bear Mountain, but not very big. Like a Bear Mountain.
Did you say Big Boy Mountain or Big Bear Mountain?
Big Bear Mountain. But they should just do it like a smaller version of it. And because there's actually quite a bit of space over by the Terrible Mine Ride, what they could do is they could kind of make it go around the mine ride, have it obviously themed to like the Frontier, theme it to, I don't know, the Pony Express. Kind of a cute theme now I think about it. Kind of like Knott's inspired.
We love
again.
Knott's Berry Farm, if you haven't noticed.
But this whole corner is like Knott's Berry Farm. So anyway, do like a family themed kind of, what is that thing that drags, like a stagecoach?
Yeah.
Like a stagecoach themed launch coaster in this little area. Doesn't have to be very big. Doesn't have to be as big as Big Bear Mountain, but it could be decent capacity. Have a go around, and then have the island again be its own thing.
I just think you
but
forget
that
like the amount of space that is occupied by the Sky Coaster in Snake River Falls is huge. And
that's perfect for a family launch coaster that also kind of goes over to where Mine Ride is.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to take away from the elegant presence of the island in the background, where a launch log flume and launch flying coaster will forever share the plot.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, you know what? I feel like a family launch coaster could be good for that park.
Yeah. This is another one I've heard people talk about that would benefit Cedar Point is like family multi-launch coasters have become so popular. They're so well liked. There's a lot of stuff you can do with them. You can also do them. You can also shoot it straight, like Big Bear Mountain. It doesn't have to be, switchbacks and forward back. It can be if that's what you want. That would be something that would differentiate a ride like that from other family coasters in Cedar Point.
But the capacity
is not as good on stuff like that. So it's it could there's a lot you could do. You could say build a Vekoma family launch coaster, and you could do a lot with that prompt. They've made some really nice upgrades to the Frontier Town area. I miss having the aero car right there with the antique cars, but I like that they turned it into walkable space and a restaurant there. I like all the
big restaurants and the bars, because by the time you get this part of the park, from no matter what entrance you've entered, you're already going to be dealing with being in the middle of your day. You want to have your lunch. You want to be able to relax a little bit, and you're not going to find any true relaxing in the part of the park that has Raptor, the entrance. It's just not an aesthetic yet, until they make all of our designs come true. But when you get to the Frontier area, all the upgrades they've made, it's actually kind of a really pleasant place in the park. And having a thrilling launch coaster, speaking of Maverick, and having a supporting act family coaster in that area, I think that would be a very nice compliment. And that then brings us to the next area of the park, which surprisingly, I will actually make this a transition. So I'm not the biggest Cedar Creek Mine Ride fan, neither is Alex. Not because I don't like the product type. It's just that we don't like the trains. The trains are incredibly bulky. They're hard to get into. They're difficult. But I say they take the Gemini trains and place them on there. And instead of them being on Gemini will just no longer exist.
Yeah,
and that will bring
what about
us
Gemini?
into
Well, what about
the final section of the show. Gemini will be Gemini no more. Should be Gemigone.
It's time, you guys. And we love Gemini. We love Gemini. We had a great ride on it, even though they were only running one side. We had a great ride on it because it stopped us in the mid-course breaks. And we sat there for about 15 minutes. That was fun. But yeah, Gemini, we've thought about this a lot because I love Gemini. And I don't want to say demolish Gemini for the clout or whatever. Although I don't think it would even be that controversial. I think there's been rumors of swirling that Gemini would be next to go. That's been a rumor for a long time. The writing's on the wall. The ride opens 2 hours after the park opens. Some rides open an hour.
I guess this could be different during high season, but yeah.
I just feel like the barometer, the measurements are there. Everything on that park opens either with the park or an hour later, except for Gemini, which opens 2 hours later. And it's not like it's the furthest away from the park. People have to walk past it to go ride Maverick or Steel Vengeance. Cedar Creek Mine Ride opens, if the park opens at 10, Mine Ride opens at 11. But for whatever reason, they still don't justify operating Gemini until noon. And it's because the demand is not there. And it's the sad, it's the same story with other overbuilt, dueling wooden, roller coasters. It's the capacity is too high for the demand. So when they run it with one side, because that's what the capacity is necessary, then the ride loses its whole gimmick is gone, which then breeds even more lack of interest in the ride. It's a cyclical thing. Because it doesn't race anymore, people are less interested in riding it, and now that people are less interested in riding it, it never races because they just don't need the capacity. Granted, there's probably, like you said, there's probably peak season days where they run both sides. But I just feel like it's obvious that is the one roller coaster attraction in the whole park that is not performing to the level of pretty much everything else there.
But then there's the replacement. I present to you Gemini Double I, aka Gemini 2.
That was my idea.
And Gemini 2 is going to be a missing puzzle piece in the lineup because while Blue Streak is cute from a distance, she's nothing. And
that's
so
rude.
we need
I like
Blue
Streak. It's not a bad ride. It's just very traditional.
Very traditional. We need a modern but firm wooden roller coaster. I need a high-capacity wooden coaster. I want something that lives in the footsteps of Gemini. I want a giant racing GCI coaster. I want a Joris en de Draak 10.0. I want something massive. I want straight drops to... So here's my actual fantasy. I have already thought about the layout, and I haven't discussed it with you prior. So here we go. I want the station to stay in the same spot as it is right now.
Okay.
Build maybe a little more cute.
I would love for them to repurpose the station. It's a beautiful station.
I don't even think they should repurpose it necessarily, but maybe.
It's iconic. They have to keep the station. It's so
iconic,
cute.
but I was thinking, what if they just build a similar station and did a similar aesthetic? You can do retro. Retro is not hard to do. You just have to reapply it. Anyway,
I want them to keep the ugly Epcot glass roof on top. It's just too good.
They can build a new ugly roof. No, anyway, so you leave the station, and I want the station to have a couple of little dips. It's kind of you're kind of used to from GCI Woodies. It has a couple of unexpected moments. Maybe make it kind of like Gold Striker, where a couple of just swift turns is all you really need. And then your lift hills are going to be in the same spot that they've been right now. And your first drop is going to be in the same spot they have right now. I want this lift hill to be tall because the current ride is actually quite tall. It's kind of a massive coaster for it to be a family coaster. It's a really big ride. So replacing it with a wooden coaster with the same height, for a GCI, you can do a lot with this height. You can do a lot with the shaping. And this would allow for 3-turn operations without needing a mid-course breaker, because they don't do mid-course break runs on GCIs, and I don't even want to imagine one having one because it would just ruin the pacing. So this way you can do a slower lift hill. You can always run 3 trains on both sides. That should be good capacity for what Cedar Point needs, and you'll maintain the class as a Gemini. Anyway, moving on. You have your first drop, and I want that first drop to be kind of like the current first drop. Same profiling. You're racing down the first drop, up to second drop, and then once you crest the second hill, that's when I want all hell to break loose. You go separate ways. You start doing all the cool racing stuff. You can trade each other. And I don't want this to be like Lightning Racer, because Lightning Racer to me is too separated. The elements are very similar, but you're doing them all far away from each other. I want this to be a large version of yours.
I want wooden, I need these trains. Wodan Stardust Racers.
Yeah. Pretty much. I need your 2 trains to be very close to each other at almost every single moment in the ride. There could be maybe a moment or two where you go opposite directions for a brief moment just to meet up or race each other in opposite directions. But generally speaking, also out of respect for Gemini, I want these trains close to each other at all times. You can build some good airtime moments in there. If you build me a Gold Striker that races, because I love Gold Striker, you've got a winner. And I think a racing GCI coaster, in that plot, there's so much space in Gemini, guys. Gemini takes up way more space than it's worth, in my opinion. And I like my arrows, of course, and it runs well. It's a cool ride, but it's time for a replacement. It's a prime real estate, and it's just a perfect plot perfect plot, perfect space for a well-sized racing GCI coaster. And at that point, we're gonna pay homage to Gemini. We're gonna do like a new era of this concept of a racing wooden coaster that's actually wood and not just marketed as such.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's like the perfect fit.
Yeah.
And who would have thought, starting this episode, that we were going to throw in a GCI coaster that raced? I don't think a lot of people were expecting that.
You love GCI. I think people know that.
I do love GCI, but how frequently do I vocalize that in the podcast?
That's true.
Maybe more on social media.
Well, I think the biggest surprise would be vocalizing that we're fine with a one-of-a-kind aero coaster being demolished, but it's neither here nor there.
Ian is turning over in his grave right now. Actually, he's alive still.
It's just not going to last. It's not going to last. There's a lot of things. Everything that we've talked about is our, pie in the sky, armchair Imagineering. Very, very, very little of this will actually happen. But one thing will happen. Gemini is not long for this world. I would be shocked if it made it into the next decade. Shocked. I really don't think it has long. And a Cedar Point, fix your bathrooms. And, but yeah, I think that's really the focal point of our armchairing Imagineering experience with Cedar Point. That and how we're going to turn Forbidden Frontier into a part of the park that is
There's one
useful.
final short thing we have to mention, and that is the fact that we think we should do an overall aesthetic overhaul of Cedar Point Shores. I would like for it to match the whole boardwalk idea that they've got going on with the boardwalk area now.
Yeah, I
They've
agree.
got the new boardwalk pavilion, the big restaurant. Of course, Breakers has that kind of aesthetic. So, I guess are we talking 20s Oceanside aesthetic? I think they should really hold in on that and make Cedar Point Shores very much heavily kind of pavilionized in that sense, where it has that kind of Coney Island, kind of roaring 20s boardwalk aesthetic. For me, that's one of the missing pieces. Is I feel like it feels a little bit disjointed between thematic old and new slides and all that kind of stuff. That could be a really
when they
nice
rethemed it
kind
to
of thing,
Cedar
but
Point
that's about
Shores,
it.
they made some nice improvements. But I think it's time for another round. It's time. It's time for another slide tower. It's time to do some aesthetic stuff. Plant more trees, basically the kind of stuff that we need to see happening to the Cedar Point Midway is the kind of stuff that we need to see happening also to Cedar Point Shores. And then finally, as I don't know if we actually talked about this, but maybe we did. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think Cedar Point has a lot of room for improvement with the food in the park. My closing statement on Cedar Point is just that, I'm not vegetarian. Sean is not vegan. But it would be nice if there were more interesting or healthy or enriching food options for people who are vegan or vegetarian. It's just, I feel like there's just a great opportunity. There's room for more food experiences in a place like Cedar Point. Again, we're gonna tap the Knott's Berry Farm mine again, but it's Knott's Berry Farm is a food destination. And there's no reason why Cedar Point can't also be a food destination for more than just French fries, and fried cheese.
I will interrupt you there. I do think that, Knott's Berry Farm quite literally is built because of the restaurant, because of the fried chicken, because of the berries. And in California, there is a lot more competition for food.
Yeah.
Theme parks there all have pretty decent food. The whole food scene in Southern California is one of the most exquisite in the whole nation.
The whole world.
Continent. So I think if you're gonna do it kind of reminds me of how Knott's Berry Farm gets away with doing a several month live entertainment event, Ghost Town Alive, that's incredibly successful, where you will get the audience dancing with you around Ghost Town. You cannot get the Cedar Point audience to that point. This is not what people go to Cedar Point for. So while I would love that kind of thing, is it realistic to ask for a food experience at Cedar Point?
I'm just saying I want more
Milton
food. There's plenty. I'm not saying it has to be highbrow. I'm not saying it has to be a $150 tasting menu. I just want salad. It's it's not too much. I know we're out in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest, but I would never ask for more than just some produce. There's something there. They've done some stuff. I miss Melt. I wish Melt had been more of a success because I really liked having a table service restaurant. I understand that Cedar Point, by its very nature, doesn't lend itself to a table service restaurant. I hope that it wasn't the last time that they try something like that. But yeah, I just think there's room for food options beyond what's already there. I know that's very vague, but I think they could just, and some of the franchise food options are kind of weak. Like, I know you could go to Subway, but there's got to be something, there's got to be better, there's got to be more that can be done at a place with the
I will
kind
say
of
overall, I
magnitude
feel
of
like
Cedar Point.
they've kind of improved that scene though, because they've got like the barbecue restaurant, they've got the restaurant in by Maverick, like the big ones.
Yeah.
Like I feel
Boardwalk restaurant.
like it's coming, but it could be maybe a more, maybe a little bit more of that. Maybe a little more variety. Maybe a little bit of variety in a more quick servicey sense.
I don't really like chain restaurants inside of theme parks like Subway and Panda Express because I don't feel like the quality is as reliable. It's always some like weird dipshit limited menu that they charge a shitload extra for because it's a chain. Like, so I feel like there's just got to be, there's a solution there. I don't know what it is as far as like, what can we expect Cedar Point to turn a profit on food wise, selling them to the average like Cedar Point guest. But there's room there. There's something that can be done there beyond like, and it's not that the food there is bad. The food that they do have is good. Like the fries and stuff is really fun and good. And there's some good stuff there. I just think there just needs to be a little bit more. But I think you're right. I think they're going in that direction. And then I guess to finish off, there's a couple of things that I don't think Cedar Point should do that we've pontificated that there's some popular ideas of like things that Cedar Point needs. And I think there's a good reason why those are popular ideas, but then I also feel like there's a reason why they're not doing them. Holiday events is a great example. I mean, they do Halloween, don't they? Do they do a Halloween event there? I should know that.
Yeah, Halloween weekends.
They do Halloween
God,
weekends.
babe. Yeah.
But as tempting as I think it would be for someone on the outside to say that they should do the Christmas event, they don't. They tried it. It didn't work. And Cedar Point...
Yeah, it's just too cold. They should not be doing
Cedar
that.
Point being open is a seasonal event. The whole park is a seasonal event. It just doesn't... I don't think there's a lot of room to do these seasonal things at Cedar Point. It would be fun if they did like a food festival or something, but like I feel like that's that kind of stuff is for parks that have longer seasons anyway. There could all be unnecessarily complicated at a place like Cedar Point and just not really sustain itself. The big thing that people talk about at Cedar Point needing is some sort of indoor attraction, whether it's like an indoor coaster or a dark ride or something. And Sean and I talked about this because I kind of like the idea of them having a shooting dark ride. We've also seen what can happen when a roller coaster park tries to open a shooting dark ride. Six Flags Magic Mountain, which all of the Justice League shooters are like well-intended and likable additions, but at a place like Magic Mountain, it just didn't work. It's not what people go to Magic Mountain for. I don't think it's what people go to Cedar Point for. And to say, and in addition to that, I think you go to Cedar Point because it's summertime and the weather is nice and you're enjoying being there and having an indoor ride. Not only would you have a large show building that's very difficult to hide in a place like Cedar Point. It takes up a lot of space and is visible from all angles. But it's just not what you're there at Cedar Point to do. You're not at Cedar Point to go inside a building and do something in the dark. And the public response to something like that could be tepid. It could be mixed.
Another problem with dark rides or even indoor coasters, because we had considered the potential indoor coasters, that you're going to now put a giant box in a park that's already kind of highly visible.
Yeah.
And there's not a good way at Cedar Point to hide that, because you've got on one side you have the water park, the campgrounds, and your beach walkways. On the other side you've got your wharfs. I just think that putting a big box dark ride, or especially with a roller coaster where you need higher ceilings, it's just not really a thing for Cedar Point, I don't think. I just don't think it would complement the park that nicely. And while I'm always team well-rounded lineup, you have to be realistic here. For Cedar Point, you're going to go for a banging attraction lineup of just outdoor attractions. People don't spend their entire winters inside and wherever they are in that part of the country just to go and focus on darker. I don't know. It's just, for me, it just doesn't feel like it matches the vibe of Cedar Point.
And then if you have weather conditions at Cedar Point, I know early in the season, it's always still very cold and they sometimes struggle with operations. I like the idea of an indoor ride, especially something with decent capacity. But then if you have one ride that is open in adverse weather conditions and the whole park rushes to it to ride it, and then it's like a 4-hour wait, that's kind of its own problem too. Like if you want to provide indoor attractions, provide several indoor attractions and give a good even distribution of something for people to do if it's raining, or if there's a thunderstorm, or if it's snowing, or whatever the hell is going on at Cedar Point during those opening days. And also, like you said, with like a roller coaster, an indoor coaster, it's like Cedar Point did that for quite some time with disaster transport. And I don't think it's something that it was done because they kind of bought a lemon with an Avalanche Run, and then they felt like, we can doll this thing up by making it a Space Mountain type ride. And I just don't know if it's something that the park needed as badly as the ride needed it to be like a good return on investment. And because ever since it went away, it's not like I hear people talking about like, oh, wow, like we really need an indoor coaster to replace disaster transport. Like, oh, we really need an indoor ride. Even Cedar Point, with their long history of rides, they've had a few dark rides here and there, small scale stuff like the earthquake ride and the pirate ride, little like Fantasyland size stuff. It was never that deep for Cedar Point, and I don't think it was ever that deep for the patrons.
If you're gonna do dark ride stuff,
just would not be worth the money. I think for a place like Cedar Point.
If you're gonna do dark ride stuff, it should be incorporated in existing attractions.
Yes.
Like on the railroad, you build a smaller building, and you almost like the Disneyland thing where you add a couple of scenes on there. Or if you're gonna build, my suggested new log flume, you can put dark ride scenes in the log flume.
Yeah.
Stuff like that is great.
A flying coaster with a dark ride sequence.
Yeah, or like I said, like fluff up the theming aspects on the Rapids ride. Make part of it maybe slightly indoor. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but doing a full-on dark ride, well, it's really great on paper. I just don't think it fits the park. I don't think it's something they need. I don't think that's just not really Cedar Point.
Yeah.
Hope we don't get
I agree.
crap for that, but that's just how I feel about it. And I think that makes for a pretty well-rounded Cedar Point. Anything else to add, Alexander?
Oh, another thing I don't want for Cedar Point. I don't want another RMC. No offense. You'll notice that
Who wants another RMC?
The coasters that we talked about, it's like I would gladly take Vekoma, GCI, Mack rides, like anything but RMC. I'm so RMC'd out, and you've got a pretty good one. Like Steel Vengeance is a great RMC as far as RMCs go, but I just like there's people that want 500-foot T-Rex, Railblazer, maybe a dueling something like Yoi at Wallaby Hall, and I don't think so.
Joy. Yeah. No, I don't think so. I mean, that's just a terrible capacity idea. It kind of worked for Magic, and even then, they have 4 trains that run 3 at a time. And even then, if it's operating, I just don't know if it's the right capacity. And Magic doesn't get the same kind of average daily attendance based on opening days out of the year because the crowds are just more spread out. Yeah, I don't think another RMC is something that is even really that good of an addition to Cedar Point. That's not really something that's missing at all. And if you got Steel Vengeance, arguably for a lot of people the best and of course the biggest RMC hybrid, who needs?
Yeah, RMC's rule book is not big enough. They don't do enough things with their rides for a park to necessarily need 2 rides, unless one is on one end of the spectrum and one end is on the other. Twisted Colossus and Wonder Woman are relatively different from each other. They're different enough that they seem like they fit really nicely together. But when you have a ride like Steel Vengeance, I feel like it does everything that an RMC could possibly do, whether it's a single rail or a hybrid. And at that point, it's like, well, you've done the entire RMC playbook. So at that point, it's people just want an RMC to want an RMC. So they can have a second Steel Vengeance. It's like, well, that's not what the park needs, frankly.
That's it. And that brings us to an hour and a half, almost, of playtime. And I want to thank everyone so much for tuning into this episode of Coaster Kings Radio. Again, check out our recent episode where we kind of show how we turn into Cedar Point fanboys. That's a fascinating one. Of course, we have our remastered episode that we just mentioned earlier this episode about Jaga Lake. Very fascinating stuff. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star review. Leave us a review. If you're living on Spotify, rate this show 5 stars. We really appreciate the growth. This has been so far, by far, our biggest season. I think also maybe our most fun season. We've had so many great episodes, so much good content, so many parks that I know a lot of our listeners really care about. So check out all of our previous episodes, and we'll just catch you guys again next week on another episode of Cozy Kings Radio. Bye.
Bye.